What is going on, YouTube family? So today we are going to be talking about the original Halloween 2. And the reason why I say the original Halloween 2 is because if you guys want, I'm going to basically explain a little bit. If you think about it, there's really like three versions of Halloween 2. There's the original, which came out in 1981, which takes place in the same night as the very first Halloween, released in 1978, which I covered in a previous video. Then you have the Rob Zombie Halloween reboot called Halloween 2, which came out in 2009, which I think is one of the worst Halloween movies in the entire franchise, but I will save that for when I get to that movie. And then we have Halloween 2018, which, if you think about it, it erases every other Halloween sequel before it and basically becomes Halloween 2. If you think about it, it takes place 40 years after the original. So there's pretty much like 4 or 5 different timelines in the Halloween franchise. But today I'm going to be talking about what I think, honestly, there's an argument to be made, is the best and the original Halloween 2. So this movie picks up in the same night that the original Halloween 1978 takes place, as I said earlier. And to pretty much just talk about, just to, recap, basically, we, in Halloween, the original, we learned that Michael Myers was a 6-year-old kid, stabbed his sister to death. I can't remember how many times, but he stabbed her to death. He goes and gets locked away in Smith's Grove Sanitarium for 15 plus years. Makes his escape on Halloween night, 1978. Gets back to his hometown of Haddonfield. We're introduced to our protagonist, Laurie Strode, and he stalks her, basically, kills all of her friends, has some kind of infatuation with her or some kind of obsession. They never really explain it. He tries to take her out. She's actually able to survive thanks to the other hero of our story, Dr. Loomis, played by the late, great Donald Pleasence, wonderfully played by Donald Pleasence, who basically shoots Michael Myers 6 times. And the way Halloween 1 left off was Michael gets shot 6 times. When Dr. Loomis goes, when he gets shot, he gets knocked off the balcony down to the backyard below. And after a question, Laurie Strode basically asks Dr. Loomis, was that the boogeyman? Something that Michael Myers had been frequently called. He's been called the Shape, the Boogeyman, all these names. And she asks, was that the boogeyman? And Dr. Loomis turns and says, as a matter of fact, it was. And when Dr. Loomis says this, he goes to check on Michael to see if he's dead, if he's still, laying down. And as soon as he looks over the balcony, Michael is nowhere to be found. He was able to just shake off the bullets. He's on the loose. And it ends so iconically with the Halloween theme playing, that terrified, concerned look by Dr. Loomis with the Halloween theme playing. It's awesome, you guys. So this movie picks up right where that movie left off. We see Michael Myers shot in a hail of gunfire. We don't see him get up. We just see the recap from the first movie where Dr. Loomis basically goes over to the balcony and is able to look over and see that Michael Myers isn't there. And this movie has some really iconic lines by Dr. Loomis. Dr. Loomis always has iconic lines, but in the opening of this movie, we see Dr. Loomis basically in terror, knocking on people's doors. And there's one neighbor who comes out of his house and he says, "Oh, what's going on? Is this some kind of trick? Is this some kind of joke? I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight." And Dr. Loomis turns and tells him, "You don't know what death is." And then, bam, soon the Halloween theme starts to play. An updated version of John Carpenter's Halloween theme plays. And this movie has one of the best openings to me, in my opinion, next to the original. I think the original has the best opening, and I would say this one has the second best opening. But so another thing I like about this movie is just like the original. We see it from multiple perspectives. We see it from Laurie's perspective. We see it from Dr. Loomis's perspective. And that's another thing I like about this movie. We see more of Dr. Loomis in this movie than I think we saw in the first film. And Dr. Loomis is my favorite character. So I think when Donald Pleasence is on screen in these movies, even when they're bad, it's always refreshing and it's always a good thing to see Dr. Loomis. He's such a breath of fresh air in this franchise, even when the Halloween movies are bad. And we also, like I said, we see the perspective of Michael Myers. You know, what is Michael Myers doing? Where is he going? But again, you guys, as I said in the first Halloween review that I did based on the Halloween 1978, the original, I love this movie because it's not just... we don't just see it from the perspective of the killer and the survivor / final girl. There's so many other things that go on in this movie. And this movie is a perfect companion piece to the original. And I don't care that Halloween 2018, brief spoilers, undid this timeline. This to me is still one of the best Halloween sequels. I think there's an argument to be made that this is the best Halloween sequel. Some people say it's 2018. Some people say it's Halloween 4. Some people say it's H2O. Maybe I'll do a video about that in the future and I'll rank them and I'll talk about it. But I think there's argument to be made that this is the best sequel. It goes hand in hand. It's like a perfect match. It's like a perfect glove with the first movie. And I just love what they were doing with these early Halloween films. Like, yes, there's the mystique and the mystery of Michael Myers. You know, they touch a little bit more on Haddonfield in this movie. They touch a little bit more on the Myers family in this film. But I just always loved how these original Halloween films told this story from different perspectives. And I think that's why, in my personal opinion, the Halloween franchise is a little bit better than the Friday the 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Street franchises, because they're able to distinguish the fact that we're not just, you know, Michael Myers is almost like Godzilla, essentially. When we watch the Godzilla movies, normally Godzilla isn't, you know, in the movie for 80 minutes of the runtime. Normally Godzilla is in the movie 15 to 20 minutes. He's like that. He's like the monster of the day. He's like that character that, you know, we know about, we learn more about in this movie. We start to see a little bit more of why he does the things that he does. But it's so refreshing that a movie called Halloween that centers around Michael Myers doesn't oversaturate his presence in the film. And I think that's why almost 40 years later, next year, 40 years later, Halloween 2 is still one of the best slashers in my personal opinion. So this movie picks up with Laurie Strode being taken to the Haddonfield Hospital. Michael Myers is basically trying to find Laurie Strode. He's basically trying to finish her off. Dr. Loomis is basically still on a hunt to basically put an end to Michael Myers, to basically, you know, stop the evil, which is normally always Dr. Loomis's, that's his role in the movies. But again, like with this one, we start to see a little bit more of, I don't want to say the madness of Dr. Loomis, because that really doesn't happen until like part 4, part 5. He starts to kind of lose it. But this is more of that stoic, selfless hero character that's willing to put himself on the line to basically get rid of his not his patient, basically put an end to his patient. Somebody Loomis knows what Michael is capable of, even especially after the first movie, and seeing that, you know, Michael has killed 3 teenagers. Michael is basically going on a rampage. And this movie basically picks up the gore factor. That's one of the things I liked about the original Halloween is I don't think you really see too much blood in the original Halloween. There may have been a little bit here and there. And I think with this movie, with the first Friday the 13th film, which came out 2 years after the original Halloween, you could tell that movie was influenced by the original Halloween. But I think with this movie, you can tell that Friday the 13th had now had an influence on this movie, because they upped the body count. There was more gore. There were some more graphic kills. With the first Halloween, the kills were a little bit less graphic. You know, you had they were basically, and they weren't bad kills, but they were based in practicality, honestly. And that's not to say that Halloween 2 the kills are worse. I mean, honestly, I think some of the kills in this movie are better. I just think that this movie tried to up the body count and it tried to up the gore factor, and it's not a bad thing, but it's just it loses a little bit of stride with the things that I think made the first Halloween so iconic. So Laurie Strode is in the hospital, basically trying to recover from, her wounds, the hellish night she's had with Michael Myers. And Michael Myers is going throughout the city of Haddonfield. He kills a couple of people, and he basically is just moving throughout Haddonfield almost without purpose. And then there's a scene where he runs into one of the local towns people, a young kid, with his radio, and over the radio they actually announced that Laurie Strode was taken to Haddonfield Memorial or Haddonfield General, whichever one is called. I kind of forget. So pretty much as soon as Michael hears this, he automatically makes his way to Haddonfield Hospital. He's basically going there to finish what he started with Laurie Strode. He takes out some of the paramedics. He takes out some of the nurses and doctors and, some of the people in the hospital. And I have to be completely honest with you guys. I think the original is better than this one. But this one, I think, is really good, too. This movie, Halloween 2, there's something about the hospital aspect where it's not like a typical, you go to the hospital today, like in real life, and there's thousands of people around. There's something about this hospital setting where there's not as many people around. Michael has dispatched a majority of the people working in the hospital, and it's really creepy. And I think it's a little bit creepier than the first movie, because with the first movie we kind of had the town of Haddonfield. We were kind of isolated to a couple of houses, a couple of areas, but this one is more isolated, so Michael is basically able to do a little bit more damage in the isolated area that he's in. And I think that adds to the creep factor in this movie. I still think the first movie is a little bit scarier than this one, but I do like the hospital setting. I know a lot of people don't like this. And one of the critiques I do have for this movie, again, I think this is a solid sequel. I think when I do a ranking of all the Halloween movies, this one will probably rank pretty high. But one critique I have about this is that Laurie Strode really doesn't play that big of a role in the movie. I mean, she's in the movie probably, maybe a little bit less than Michael, maybe the same amount as Michael. I can't really give you guys a definitive answer on how much screen time she gets, but she definitely gets less screen time than in the first movie. This movie revolves more around Loomis and Michael, honestly, and I don't think that's a terribly bad thing, but I think for what they were trying to go for with this movie, with Laurie ultimately being the heroine of the movie. She's been in, most of the movies. She's had a presence in most of the different Halloween timelines, whether the movies, the comics, whatever, whatever you have, so have you. But it's a little bit unfortunate to see that she takes a bit of a backseat in this movie. Because I think they were trying to build up more of like Michael Myers in this movie and more of Loomis, which again I think are awesome things, but I wish they kind of would have did it more of a even three-way split. And I guess honestly there really isn't much for Laurie to do, and maybe that's kind of what played into it. Maybe they backed into a corner because Laurie's basically recovering. So basically, Laurie comes to understand that Michael is in the hospital. They actually come face to face. Michael actually dispatches a nurse right in front of Laurie, and we have that cat and mouse chase scene. Pretty, I don't want to say early in the film, but not as late as in the 1978 original. That was like towards the end of the movie. This is kind of like more midway through the movie. So Laurie is, basically takes off, runs for Michael Myers. She's hurt, she's wounded, she's not at full capacity. And she's actually able to escape from Michael Myers. She ends up on the outside of the hospital, and To cut to Dr. Loomis and Nurse Marion Chambers. This is the movie, and this is the movie that basically gives us the origin that Laurie Strode is the younger sister of Michael Myers. And unlike most people, I think this is really split 50-50 in the fandom. There's people who like this idea. There's people who come to enjoy it. There's people who don't like this. I actually am not bothered by the fact that Laurie and Michael Myers are siblings. You know, I know behind the scenes, John Carpenter pretty much said one night he was drinking. He was trying to come up with an idea to, you know, make this movie make sense. And that's where the idea for the familial relationship with the two characters of Michael Myers and Laurie Strode, that's basically where it came from, is, you know, John Carpenter. I don't think he likes the idea that much. I actually think it makes a lot of sense given where this movie, where the franchise goes, especially with Halloween 4 and 5, H2O, and even, you know, to a lesser degree, Halloween 6 and, you know, Resurrection. But I think that, you know, I think this is a decent origin, honestly. Because to be completely honest, guys, I've seen Halloween 2018 a couple of times, and I'm not sure how I feel about the fact that they got rid of the family aspect. I really kind of like it because it was able to go in a direction that I think it improved upon what Halloween H2O did with, you know, Laurie's PTSD and basically having to come face to face with Michael Myers again. But in all honesty, you guys, the movies that tackle Laurie and Michael as, you know, family, there's something about it that even though Laurie Strode is ultimately a good character, she's not the same as Michael Myers. Sometimes with the movies that they are siblings, and it almost seems like that. It almost seems like a flip of a coin. You've got the heads and you've got the tails, and there's something about that, you guys, that I personally kind of like. I kind of like the idea that, you know, it makes sense why Michael, you know, is out to kill everybody in his family. You know, he kills, in the first movie, he kills his sister Judith. You know, we find out that Laurie is his sister in this movie. He's out to get rid of her. Halloween 6 kind of built on this a lot. Halloween H2O built on this. So I'm okay with that aspect. The only thing I don't like with revealing that Laurie and Michael are siblings is the way that this movie doesn't deliver. It's almost like there's that scene where Dr. Loomis and Nurse Marion Chambers, she actually is the one, Nurse Chambers is the one who discovers that Michael and Laurie are brother and sister. But and she reveals that to Dr. Loomis, and, you know, it makes sense to Dr. Loomis once it's revealed to him. But this movie kind of picks up where it's almost like, and I'm not sure if the movie implies that Laurie knows, because I think Laurie has a dream in this movie. She does have a dream where she remembers going to see Michael in the hospital, you know, as he was a little bit older. He was still young man pretty much. But I just don't like that direction. I felt like they could have did it in a bigger way. They could have made it known, because there's a scene later in the movie where Michael is trying to take Laurie out, and she just screams, "Oh, Michael!" And it's like, you know, in between the end of the first movie and this movie, they never explain that Laurie knows who Michael Myers is. So you kind of just have to assume that it was either revealed to her sometime off screen in between, which that doesn't make sense. Basically, she either just knows the story of Michael Myers. She's basically either revealed the story of Michael Myers. Maybe she knows because she lived in Haddonfield her whole life. But I would have liked to see that in this movie, you guys. I would have liked to see them touch on Laurie knowing. Because the next time we see Laurie Strode, almost 20 years later in Halloween H2O, it's never shown how she knows that Michael is her brother. It's just, oh, she's terrified of Michael. She knows it's her brother. She knows what he does every Halloween. And I think that hurts this movie a little bit for me. I would have liked to put this movie on par with the original, but that right there, and the fact that Laurie doesn't play that much of a prominent role in this movie, it hurts the film for me. It hurts it in, you know, ranking. But ultimately, Dr. Loomis and Nurse Chambers are able to get to the hospital, and Laurie is basically outside of the hospital. Michael, finds her, is basically about to kill her. She's able to get to the door of the entrance of the hospital, and Dr. Loomis hears her and is able to, get her into the hospital in time. And they basically have a little reunion scene, which I really do like, because it just shows that, Dr. Loomis cares for Laurie, that he's not just cold and calculating. He's not just out to get Michael. He cares about Laurie. I think there's almost, I don't want to say an argument to be made, but there's a little bit of a surrogate father type relationship, like slightly, between Loomis and Laurie. And I really like that, because this is the last movie that Dr. Loomis and Laurie appear in together, because, Jamie Lee Curtis stopped playing Laurie Strode for a while. We got Halloween 3, which had nothing to do with Michael Myers. Halloween 4, which dealt with her daughter. Halloween 5, which dealt with her daughter. Halloween 6, which also kind of dealt with Loomis and Jamie Lloyd, a.k.a. Laurie's daughter. And then when Jamie Lee Curtis came back to the franchise, Donald Pleasence actually passed away between post-production of Halloween 6 and filming of Halloween H2O, so he never got the chance to team back up with Laurie. So that's one thing I like about this movie, is that they're together again. There's a little bit of a surrogate father relationship where, he clearly cares about Laurie. So Michael actually busts through the window, through the glass, and Loomis is able to shoot him a couple more times. And they think, maybe he's dead. And one of the police officers gets too close, and Michael gets up and slits his throat. And there's a chase scene. Nurse Chambers has gone outside to radio for the sheriff and the police and, the authorities to get there. And basically, Laurie and Loomis have to have another chase scene with Michael, and basically he corners them into a room. Dr. Loomis turns on the gas, one of the machines in the hospital. He's able to turn it on. And basically Laurie's able to get away, and Dr. Loomis sacrifices himself, quote unquote. And basically Dr. Loomis and Michael Myers both die in this movie. And we get to our resolution, and Laurie, escapes the hospital. She's led off into the ambulance into, another hospital. It doesn't really say where, but all in all, you guys, this is, if I had to rank this on my, my 5-tier ranking system, I'm going to go with really good. I think there's a couple things that hold this movie back from being as good as the original or on par with the original. As I said earlier, the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode doesn't appear much in this movie. The way Michael Myers moves in this movie, he's a lot more robotic, and that's because he was played by a different actor in this movie. And I like the portrayal, honestly, some of the things Michael does, but there's just a couple of scenes where Michael moves so robotically, and it's a little frustrating. Like, to me, it's a little bit hard to take serious. Especially there's a scene in the movie where he first sees Laurie in the hospital, and he moves so robotically, like the way he takes his steps. It's almost as if I'm in this movie, I almost could think like you're moving so slow and so robotic, like I could just run right past you. I'm not even scared. I'm taking off. I'm running into the night, into Haddonfield. You're never going to catch me. And that is something that I think, with this movie, just holds it back a little bit. The portrayal of Myers in part 1 is much better. And like I said, it's not that he's portrayed badly in this movie. It's just, it's not as, Michael Myers-esque as we've come to know with the original movie. So, all in all, you guys, like I said, this movie is really good. A couple of missteps. The familial relationship between Laurie and Michael does not bother me. It does not hurt this ranking, in my opinion. I've seen other people, who say they hate it, and that's why they feel like this movie isn't that good. You guys, to me, this is a solid slasher. I still think, as I'm a fan of the Friday the 13th movies, particularly 1 through 4, Friday the 13th Part 1 through 4, which I think are some of the best Friday the 13th movies. I still say Halloween 2 is probably on par with those first 4 Friday the 13th movies, or better. Honestly, I still think it's solid. I still think there's an argument to be made that it's probably, to me, in my opinion, one of the best Halloween sequels. I've heard people say Halloween Part 4 is the best Halloween sequel. I've heard people say H2O is the best Halloween sequel. I've heard people say that Halloween 2018 is the best sequel. And you know what, guys? It's fine. We're all different people. We all have different opinions. I'm sure if you lined up 10 people, some people would tell you H2O. Some people would tell you this one, Halloween 2. Some people would tell you 2018, Halloween 4. That's the thing about us, guys. We're different. We're allowed to have our own opinions. And I think they create healthy conversations where we can agree to disagree and talk about the things we like. So, you guys, do you agree with me? Do you think this movie should have been ranked awesome? Or do you agree with me that it's really good? Do you think it's on par with the original? I think it's a perfect companion piece to the original because, like I said, it takes place the same night. One of the big taglines of the original Halloween was the night he came home, and I think that this continues more of the night he came home. I'm going to cover Halloween 3 Season of the Witch in my next Halloween review, even though it has nothing to do with Michael Myers. But the next time I talk Michael Myers, you guys, we'll pick up with Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, which came out, I think, 10 years after the original, I want to say. I think 10 years. I'll talk more about it in the next movie. But you guys, what do you think? Is this a slasher film that you guys like? Do you dislike it? Are you bummed like me that, yes, Halloween 2018 is a great sequel, but I was a little bit bummed that, it erased this one. I kind of wish they could have found a way to incorporate this one. Even if they found a way to retcon that Michael and Laurie are no longer siblings for whatever reason, maybe there was a mistake or something. I would have just liked to see, because I love this movie, honestly, and I think there were more kills, which I think was better. Some of the kills in this movie, like the hot tub kill, there were some good kills in this movie, you guys. I ultimately think the first one is scarier, but I like this movie. So, guys, join me in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think about this movie, and I look forward to seeing you guys next Wednesday when I talk about Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Hats off to you guys. Thanks for following me. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.